Ms. Maas was a television news reporter, writer, and producer, and a co-anchor of the KUSI evening newscast. She worked for KUSI, as you may know, for almost 15 years. KUSI is a privately held, owned and operated business. It's owned by the McKinnon family. All the decisions important to this case were made either by Mr. McKinnon, who sometimes goes by senior, or his son, Mike McKinnon, who sometimes goes by junior. Ms. Maas has filed this lawsuit alleging a violation of the Equal Pay Act and gender discrimination because within the last year of her employment, she found out that she was being paid substantially less than her co-anchor, Alan Denton. She is also suing for retaliation because after she started questioning the disparity in pay, KUSI terminated the relationship with her and failed to renew her contract. The Equal Pay Act is a law which says that men and women must be paid the same for substantially similar work. We believe the evidence will show, in this case, that Ms. Maas and Ms. Denton were performing substantially similar duties when it came to their jobs, anchoring the prime time flagship newscasts for KUSI. KUSI and the McKinnons would have you believe that Mr. Denton was entitled to more money than Ms. Maas because he had been a news anchor longer. And yes, he had. He was older than she. You will also hear that the McKinnons, primarily senior, Mr. McKinnon, liked Mr. Denton because he considered him to be a John Wayne type. He liked his presence and he liked his deep voice. And while it is true that Mr. Denton had been in the industry longer, Ms. Maas had been in the business for 30 years herself. And she had been in the San Diego market much longer than Mr. Denton. KUSI will also allege that Ms. Maas did not put enough face time in at the station, that she would not arrive on the set early enough to prepare for her segments, and that was part of the reason they severed the relationship. The evidence will show that her co-anchor, Mr. Denton, was not at the office all the time either, and that he too performed work from home, but he was never challenged for these practices. At the end of the trial, Ms. Maas will be asking some of you folks who end up on this jury to compensate her for the wage differential and for being discriminated against and retaliated against by KUSI. She is seeking a substantial amount of money in this case for her loss of earnings and for the termination up until today, or this trial, and into the future. Ms. Maas will tell you that the termination came as a shock to her. She had been in the San Diego market for many, many years and had worked hard to establish her reputation in the industry. Working at KUSI was Ms. Maas's identity. When KUSI terminated Ms. Maas, she experienced anxiety, humiliation, and emotional distress. In addition to her request for lost earnings, Ms. Maas will be asking the jury for compensation for the experience of being discriminated against and terminated. We believe the evidence will support an emotional distress award in this case many times more than the earnings she lost. I look forward very much to working on this case in front of you, to presenting the case to you, and to having you all, or whoever of you all, end up as members of this jury. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzgerald, would you like to give any opening on behalf of your client?
I would. Good morning, everyone. Experience matters, and so does hard work. The evidence in this case will show that the plaintiff was paid fairly for her work based on KUSI's non-discriminatory judgment of her value as a news anchor. That value, the salary that she was paid, was negotiated by Ms. Maas in a series of written contracts with the station. The evidence will be that KUSI's perception of her value was a judgment about her talent, how she connected with viewers, how authentic she seemed on the air, the quality of her journalism, and the quality of her effort. The KUSI news director and management are in the business of judging talent. They make casting decisions for the news programs, and they decide how much they think an anchor is worth based on the anchor's experience, how hard they work, their market value, their audience appeal, their journalistic substance, and based on how they perform not only on the air, but on the set. Ms. Maas's testimony will be that she deserved as much money as her co-anchor, her male co-anchor, Alan Denton, and that the only difference between them was gender. The evidence will show that there were a lot of differences between them. First, Mr. Denton had more experience. He started his broadcasting career when Ms. Maas was in elementary school. When he retired in 2019, he had 48 years of experience as a professional broadcaster. Ms. Maas had 35. He had 8 years of experience as an anchor in a major TV market. Ms. Maas had 0. He had won 3 Emmy Awards. Ms. Maas had never won any. Mr. Denton had achieved greater professional success and had worked in bigger markets. His last job before KUSI was at the #6 TV market in the country, at the NBC affiliate in San Francisco. There he was paid $690,000 per year. When Ms. Maas came to KUSI in 2004, she had been unemployed as a full-time TV anchor for the last 3 years. Before that, she had worked at Channel 8, anchoring the 4 o'clock news, which is not the lead newscast. Ms. Maas had never worked as a prime-time, full-time anchor in a big city before coming to KUSI. So Mr. Denton had a higher starting salary than Ms. Maas because he was a better, more accomplished, more experienced anchor. And he ended with a higher salary than Ms. Maas because those things all remained true throughout their time co-anchoring the news together. They were doing the same job, but they were not doing it the same way. Mr. Denton worked harder than Sandra Maas. KUSI's time clock records and witnesses will prove that. Their reporting and their reporting styles were different. KUSI believed that Mr. Denton's reporting was better, that he was more engaged with the content, that he had a more authentic and compelling presence on screen. His higher pay reflected that judgment about his merit compared to Ms. Maas. Now, in April of 2018, Ms. Maas started a contract negotiation by sending an email to Mike McKinnon saying that she was the best newsreader at KUSI and that she wanted to be paid the same as Alan Denton. She claims she was retaliated against for sending that email and demanding equal pay, but she actually received an offer of a raise and a 3-year contract. She turned down the 3-year contract, saying she only wanted a 1-year deal and that she would take her chances. KUSI thought that meant in the market because they had learned that she was looking for another job at a competing station. During her last year, under the 1-year contract that she said she wanted and that she negotiated the salary for, her on-air performance was good, but her on-set performance was not. She was hostile. She was diffident. She said that she hated KUSI on camera in front of writers who she insulted. And her coworkers will testify about her attitude and how much she complained about KUSI, at one point even calling it a shithole. She'll testify that she was the victim of age and gender discrimination, but in 2019, KUSI was changing the format of its evening news. Alan Denton had retired, and it was rebranding. The KUSI evening news became what's now called Good Evening San Diego. And the format of that program is different. It's more freewheeling. There's a lot of ad-lib between the anchors. There are a lot longer interviews with guests. And Ms. Maas's talents, which are considerable, were not well suited to that format. She was a traditional newsreader.
Mr. Fitzgerald, you are beyond your time.
Thank you very much. I look forward to working on this case. Thank you.
All right, thank you.